In a speech at U.S. CENTCOM headquarters today in Florida, President Trump said that radical Islamic terrorists are committing atrocities across the world and are determined to strike within the United States. True. But then he added this.
You've seen what happened in Paris and Nice. All over Europe, it's happening. It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported. And in many cases, the very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it. They have their reasons, and you understand that.
Joining me now to talk about it, my political panel, we have with us Republican strategist and pollster Kristen Isoltis Anderson, Washington Post columnist and associate editor David Ignatius, and White House correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, Carol Lee. David, he's alleging that the media doesn't cover terror attacks in Europe and that we don't want to. Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
No, and I have to be honest, as a journalist, I'm really troubled by that. We have brave colleagues who every day are taking big risks to cover these stories. Look at the New York Times, which the president demonizes often. The New York Times this weekend had an outstanding piece of reporting about how ISIS has been reaching out, is more involved in some attacks in Europe and abroad.
We're doing a version of that story later in the show with that reporter from the Times.
Yeah. It's particularly inappropriate when we have colleagues who are doing everything they can to bring this story to America, for the president to suggest that we don't take this story seriously. I'd love to sit down with them and go through. I have about 100 examples I'd like to show him.
I don't even understand it.
I think a lot of it has to do with Donald Trump views himself as being the voice of people who are very scared. And when people sort of feel like, well, there are all these things happening in Europe and Donald Trump says that they're happening, Donald Trump validates that I should be afraid. I think that's a big piece of why this is in his message. This is why over the weekend he said if there's an attack in the United States as a result of this judge saying that my travel ban can't go into place, it'll be the judge's fault. That for him, a population that is afraid, that is deeply concerned about threats coming in from overseas, people causing attacks here in the United States, that benefits him, he thinks, and I think that's why he seeks to stoke this fear.
You know, it just occurred to me when you were saying that as to what this also might be, which is the Germans are very upset about the fact that there are all these fake news reports in Germany and throughout Europe of immigrants, refugees attacking European women and carrying out terrorist attacks. Clearly, first of all, let me just say, there are legitimate ones that happen, but there are a lot of fake ones, and that it explodes in social media, and then by the time the police and national security apparatus investigate, nothing happened, but the hysteria already got out there. Maybe he's talking about the fake news stories.
Potentially. I've asked the White House for some examples, so I'll let you know when they get back with some examples. I don't know what he is talking about, but this is another way in which, and I know we're only several weeks into this administration, this is so dramatically different from the Obama administration, which would say that journalists overcover these things and hype up the terrorists. And so it's kind of a little bit of whiplash. I don't know what he is referring to, but I do know that any news organization, when there's any kind of attack, we are all over that.
Yeah, and in fact, let me just read this, the White House spin. Sean Spicer, the press secretary, was on Air Force One. He was asked about this crazy quote, and he said that there are certain terror events, quote, that aren't exactly covered to a degree on which they should be. That was what the president meant, which of course is not what the president said. One thing I want to ask about also is what President Trump said to Bill O'Reilly about Putin. O'Reilly said, Putin is a killer. He said, there are a lot of killers who think our country's so innocent. And David, here's what Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told me about that quote yesterday. I'm trying to imagine your response if President Obama had defended the murderous reign of Putin by saying, you think our country's so innocent?
Well, look, I'm not going to critique the president's every utterance, but I do think America is exceptional. America is different. We don't operate in any way the way the Russians do.
Retired General Barry McCaffrey earlier today called the comment by President Trump about Putin comparing it favorably or at least equally with the United States un-American.
Senator McConnell's comment and McCaffrey's also suggest that Donald Trump is running out of runway with comments like this. These are so upsetting, so offensive to people in his own party. And I think that more and more, my focus as I try to cover this story of this presidency is on Republicans in Congress. They're the people who are going to have to draw clear lines, say this is unacceptable, this does not speak for our party, for our country. And to the extent they do that, I think there's some protection. If they don't, I'm worried.
I want to ask you, because you're a pollster, and President Trump said today, any negative poll
Oh, yes.
is fake news.
I almost enjoy the honesty of that tweet because, frankly, look.
You're such a positive
Well,
person.
I'm trying to be chipper. Look, you can say, I think the polls are bad. I think the polls are broken. I think the polls can't be trusted. Those are valid statements to make. That's a debatable point. Saying, I only distrust the negative polls is not actually a position that is tenable, but frankly, that is the position that he holds. So kudos to him for being at least honest about it. I think there's a lot that the polling industry needs to do to figure out how we can regain trust, how we can make sure that people believe the numbers that we're putting out. But you can't just say only the negative polls are bad. That's not how it works.
Well, and the same thing with the work we do. The negative stories, the unflattering stories are fake, he says.
Yes, this is a pattern. I mean, Donald Trump is a president who needs an opponent. There's always an opponent. The polls are the opponent, the media is the opponent, you know, whoever it is that's getting in his way. The judge is the opponent. And that's the way he sees the world. And that's where a lot of this stuff is coming from.
You were talking about Republicans in Congress. The checks and balances that we have set up in the system, freedom of the press and the press being one of them, but also, of course, the judicial branch, which some people think is now under attack because of his comments about the Judge Robart. There's a legislative branch. Are members of Congress afraid of him? Do they think that they're next in terms of trying to undercut them?
Well, it depends on how popular he is. I mean, members of Congress kind of go with the political wins. His polls are down, and I think that's going to embolden members of Congress. We're going to see how strong our system is. We're going to see whether the checks and balances work. I have been tremendously encouraged by rulings like Judge Robart's. It shows that we have rule of law. That's what we pride ourselves on, but it's going to be tested.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how long Republicans can you can almost see in your interview with Senator McConnell, they're just like, he keeps putting them in these very uncomfortable positions.
Exactly. When McConnell came on the show, he just wanted to talk about Judge Gorsuch.
Right. And
but from the time we booked the interview until the time he did the interview, there were, 50 sprays of crazy.
And there's a number of things that you've seen Senator McConnell say where those of us in Washington can tell it's like McConnell's hair is on fire, even though it doesn't sound that way because he's so subdued. And a number of things that Trump has said have led to that, including that.
Great panel. Thanks for being here, one and all. Appreciate it.